Oh wow. Here we have the Amstrad CPC 464. Here we've got the original circuit diagrams. Legend.
Well, I think it's helped a lot that they kind of sort of a bit of an in-joke named some of the games after me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think it would become a.
What kind of games were named after you then?
Well, the first two was Roland on the Ropes and Roland in the Caves.
Yeah.
And then after that, there was about. The game I like best is Roland in Time, which was about a year later, and then he went on and did Roland in Space after that, and there's about 4 or 5 other Roland games. So it's not all of them. It's not like Mario where there's 100 games called Mario.
Yeah.
But there's enough to make it a kind of a thing.
It was a good computer back in the day, though, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's what we had to do was produce an elegant design that was manufacturable reliably and at low cost.
Yeah.
So that's where this is kind of coming from. You've just compared the number of chips on here to the number of chips on that BBC Micro, and it's like night and day.
That's an original BBC schematic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ah, really interesting. What was the highlights of you working for Amstrad?
I think as an engineer, it was the fact that you knew everything you were doing was going to end up in the shops.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas a lot of other companies, most of the projects they started, they never finished. And that's very disconcerting for an engineer. You think you're putting all this effort into this, and then eventually the money's going to run out, and then it never gets in the shops. So what was the point?
True, very true.
So we knew for certain this was going to end up in the shops. We had to persuade lots of other people who didn't associate Amstrad with computers. They associated them with car radios and video recorders and audio systems, but to convince them that they were going to make a success out of the computer, therefore that they were going to write games for it, because the business model that you put your computer in the shops and then the software houses think, oh, there's a computer in the shops, let's write some games for it. Well, that's the wrong way round. You need the games in the shop alongside the first batch of computers, otherwise who's going to buy a computer with no games?
True, yeah.
And over again, if you look at some of these other sort of obituaries almost of computers that people were designing at the same time, they say, well, it's a wonderful computer, but they couldn't quite get it to work, they didn't have enough money to put it into production, and nobody wrote any games for it. So it was a very interesting design apart from all that. So that was the most important thing, was to try and join up all those dots. And I'm a dot joiner upper by trade. So
cross the T's and dots all the I's.
Yeah.
So I've never had a look in one of these before. So what chips do what?
Well, this is the gate array. There's one of these size sockets under there, and that's got most of the logic chips inside it.
Okay.
These are the DRAMs, so there's 8 DRAMs. That's the Z80. That's the ROM chip with 32K of basic and firmware in it. That's the sound chip. That's a totally standard chip. One of these, I can't remember which, is the video chip, which again is a standard chip that does the video, and the other one's a parallel port that drives the printer and the joystick and all those things like that. And then there's a very, you can't get literally all of that in there, so there's very just handful of other odd logic gates on there.
A really nice system.
We ended up a bit with the tail wagging the dog, because having designed this, we then had to start a user club, and those the first 2 issues of the magazine. We had a software catalogue. We had to get front page reviews on influential magazines like Personal Computer World. We had to do service manuals so the high street retailers would accept it. We had to do point of sale material. We had to do a welcome. That's got a welcome tape in it. It's not. We think that's all there is. That's probably about 10% of the project. And all these other bits are the rest of it.
Because it was new on the market, you had to introduce it to everyone in such a way.
We had to have a big bang to say we've got absolutely everything you want here. And we even had the floppy disk add-on available at that time.
Yeah.
So even though it came with a floppy disk, with a cassette tape integrated, even when it was first available in the shops, we all designed the external floppy disk add-on for it.
With this drive, was it always going to be a 3-inch disc?
Yeah.
Or
Because there's nothing else.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you could have used. You couldn't use the 5 1/4 inches. It's too big and too expensive. 3.5-inch discs didn't exist then. It was 3 or 4 years before IBM decided, okay, we'll adopt those. And then what have you got left? You've got micro drives and all sorts of other quirky rubbish. So there was almost, no other thing it could possibly have been. The fact that nobody else had used the 3-inch drive in quantity is kind of neither here nor there. And a few people had used some of them. Tatung used them, Tatung Einstein used them, for example. But as a concept, it was Panasonic who originated it, and then found it hard to find people to actually incorporate it in their computers. Because it was sort of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Because everyone said, oh no, we can easily fit a 5 1/4-inch drive in this huge case we've got, so why would we take this going for this new thing?
I think 5 1/4 was old.
Right?
5 1/4 was even though it was like the mainstay, it was old.
Yeah, but they're really expensive, because they all had like die-cast aluminium chassis and things like that, so you couldn't possibly stick one of those in big consumer equipment. So we just went to Max Yoshito, who's a parent company of Panasonic, and said, well, can you make us loads of, can you cost reduce it? But it doesn't need a die-cast chassis, because that's not got a die-cast chassis, so why does the floppy disk need a die-cast chassis? And they say, well, because 5 1/4-inch drives have got a die-cast chassis. Well, to make us one with a bent tin chassis, which works, so that's easier and cheaper to make.
Yeah, the Beanaway lace belt drives.
Right?
The belt drive is the Beanaway lace.
Well, the belts, but the belts in cassette drives, they perish. They're made out of rubber, so nothing made out of rubber lasts 40 years. So you just have to stick a new one in.
When I look at the board, it almost, because it's so little on it, it almost looks like it could have been a lot smaller. The actual board. Was it like sort of designed that size and then gradually you kind of integrated things into the ULA?
The design comes down from the keyboard.
Yeah.
So they visualised the keyboard. Well, there's one there. Look.
Yeah.
They visualised the keyboard and said, well, it's got to have enough space for all these keys and a cassette at the back. And so you've got all of this much to put one of these boards in. And they were expecting it to have a lot more chips than this on it.
That's what I was thinking,
Because we stuck
amalgamated them all into smaller
We stuck
ones.
600 of these inside there. So obviously it's going to be a smaller footprint. So that footprint was more than adequate for what we wanted to do. But then over the years, what they did was they shrunk this board so that it only had, these huge gaps in it. So it was made a bit cheaper to make.
The later ones with the straw the keys as well.
Yeah. That's right. This is one that I think they call them high keys.
I'm not sure which one I've got.
What made you design the cursor as it did? Because I know there wasn't a standard for it.
Well, this design was before our time.
Yeah.
This was done by the Amstrad people who were good at visualising the product.
Yeah.
And they basically copied it off the sort of computer that you see when you go to the airport and you do your check-in at the airport.
It's like a terminal kind of keyboard.
Yeah.
So it's a proper keyboard that you see on a proper computer. In most computers you use there's still the word star keys.
Yeah.
So you've got the backspace and the forward space, and so you make a kind of a cursor pad out of a random bit of the keyboard there. But they decided that you don't need these. Why do you need those for playing a game? Well, you don't, but it makes it look like a proper computer. Well, they still work.
Yeah.
But they're not really. I mean, you can play a game with these. You see, that says copy on it. Doesn't it say, jump or?
The whole aesthetics made it look like it was a professional product compared to the competition.
Right. But so you could kind of.
Compared to the hi-fis, this is the best thing on
identify with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember on the BBC Micro, there's plenty of those around here. There was a red key here.
That's right. Yeah.
And I annoyed somebody at a show like this who was working for Acorn, and you got a game, and he loaded it, spent ages loading this game up, and he said, "Oh, do you want to play this game?" And playing this game, and it then says, "Press any key to continue." So I pressed the red key, and he almost thumped me because it then take him another 10 minutes to load the whole thing up again. Well, I said, "That's any key."
I don't know why they do. Like, off keys
any
on
key
keyboards,
except the
like-
red key. So.
What was it? I think when I heard the story about the 72 kilobytes for they basically kind of put a dead. Was it like they included ROM instead of the RAM or something, or is it like a fake chip?
They just added some more RAM into it because the Spanish government decided it wanted to protect its non-existent native industry by putting a tariff on that basically banned all 64K computers.
There was an extra RAM, wasn't it? Like a decoy.
It didn't do anything, but then it would never have done anything, even if it was like fully connected up. No one's going to write a game that uses 72K of RAM because you'd only be able to sell it in Spain. And everyone always, all the games, they had to be sold worldwide. So it was always going to be a bit of a strange thing.
Clever way of getting around it.
But it basically meant that the Commodore 64 and the Spectrum, Commodore 64 in Spain, nobody bought them because they were too expensive anyway. Spectrums, they didn't buy them in Spain because they had no distribution. Basically, the only alternative in Spain was Commodore 64, and that was almost twice the price, and they just simply couldn't afford them.
But there was a big following in like France and places, wasn't it, for the Amstrad?
Yeah, because one of the things we did was, if you're in, this has got QWERTY keyboards on it, in France you put AZERTY keyboards on it. It's not difficult, but we bothered to do it. The problem with a lot of the manufacturers was they didn't bother to do it. And we took for example, this point of sale material here, I don't know who that belongs to. This point of sale material here, we had it translated into Spanish and French and German and things, so you give it to the retailers there and say, stick that, hand that out to customers, don't hand them out an English one and hope they can read English. So it's just doing those tiny little things, and it only takes somebody about a day to translate that into French or German.
Yeah.
And once you've done it once, then, job done.
Oh, brilliant.
Do you have anything to do with the Plus versions later on then? Or
Not
was it just
really.
the
I had members of my team who, because I'd moved on to PCs and other stuff internally at that point.
I don't know, there was a few upgrades, but it was a bit late in the day, wasn't it?
Well, it may have been, but I mean, we made Amstrad paid $5 million for Sinclair, basically for the brand name, and they made more than $5 million profit out of the machine. So, why not? This kind of multiple branding of products is, it's endemic in the consumer industry. So why wouldn't it be the same in computers?
Oh, fantastic. It's lovely to meet you anyway.
Okay, well, nice talking to you.
Yeah, I might see you around because I'll be doing circles. And
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be leaving fairly shortly, so if you want anything signed or whatever.
if you could just sign that for me, that'd be
Fetch
fantastic.
me yourself a pen.